الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Since I didn't do a lecture at the father-daughter dinner, I wanted to take the time out, inshallah ta'ala, and review some of what I wrote for that dinner. And what happened that night amongst the brothers and their daughters was epic. Fathers got up and they spoke from their hearts. I gave them a short scenario that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to take your soul tonight, and these would be the last words that you would give to your daughter, what would you say? And I mean, it was really heartfelt. A lot of the fathers expressed some very, very deep sentiments about how they felt about their daughters. And I kind of felt like there wasn't the time or the place for a lecture. So I'm going to take this morning and probably tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, to elaborate on what I wrote, because I didn't have a chance to talk about it then. And this discussion will be the relationship between a father and his daughter in light of the relationship between the Prophet ﷺ and his youngest daughter, Fatimah, Az-Zahra. One of the most important relationships a woman will have in her life is the relationship between her and her father. It is important to the personal development of the woman as it relates to issues such as self-esteem, self-respect, overall good morals and values, and will also impact greatly how she interacts with other men throughout her lives. A woman's relationship with her father is usually going to determine, to some degree, her relationship with every other man in her life. The relationship between a father and his daughter is very unique, as the father is the first man that the woman will ever love. She is the first man that a woman will ever love. And that love will provide her with the comfort that is necessary for her to navigate through life independently of any other man that she may come in contact with. The love that a woman receives from her father provides her with the self-esteem and the comfort, the self-assurance that she needs to navigate through life independently of any other man. And this is where fathers who are not in the lives of their daughters create needy girls, starving for attention all the time, because they didn't receive that they didn't receive that attention from their fathers at the time when their psychosocial development was beginning to, needing to be, developed. There's a psychosocial development which helps us to, enhance or to perfect our interaction with the opposite sex. And usually boys learn that from their mothers and girls learn that from their fathers. And when a father is present in the life of his daughter, he provides her with that self-assurance, that comfort that she needs to navigate through the world independently of anyone else's love. Not that she doesn't need anyone else's love, but she has love within herself. She's not looking for love. She's not marrying men. She's not going into relationships with men looking for love. She has already been provided that love through the relationship that she had with her father. And in the absence of that relationship with the father, you'll find many women go into relationships with men looking for love, looking to, to fill that void that was created because of that estranged relationship between her and her father. So the father's love provides her with the comfort and the self-assurance that is necessary to navigate through life independently and become the pillow that will always be there to catch her when everything or everyone else in the world fails her or disappoints her. So today we're going to look at a very unique relationship between a father and a daughter to give us a basic idea of what an ideal relationship, right? The relationship between the Prophet ﷺ and Fatimah was what the ideal relationship between a father and daughter should look like. And we can kind of chip off of that story as much as we can to apply to our own personal situation, even though it may not be as perfect. But we're going to look at the relationship between a father and a daughter to give us a basic idea of what an ideal relationship between father and daughter should look like in the Muslim home, so as to protect our daughters from the pitfalls that many of us have fallen into because these relationships were not fostered in our own homes, in our adolescence, in our growth, in our development. And we shouldn't feel slighted because struggle builds character. And we'll see even with the Prophet ﷺ, there was a time when Fatima asked the Prophet ﷺ for something and he didn't give it to her. And instead gave her something else because he wanted her to struggle. Understanding that struggle builds character. And we'll get to that hadith, inshallah ta'ala. So when we look at our own lives and our relationships, for those of you women that are listening, and maybe you didn't have the best relationship with your father. Maybe your relationship with your father was not the best relationship. So you shouldn't feel slighted because whatever it was that you went through with your father, you can use that as the gauge to determine how much you will give to your own daughter and how much of a relationship you will help to foster between your daughter and her father, even if the father is not in the life of the girl. Because sometimes we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're divorced, you know, my daughter doesn't need to have a relationship with her father. I'm going to get remarried and she'll develop a relationship with my current husband. No man is going to love a woman more than her own biological father. And I mean, there are some exceptions to that rule. There are some deadbeat dads that were not in the lives of their daughters. And the stepfather loved that daughter and is the only father that that daughter recognizes. But those are exceptions to the rule. That is not the rule. That is not the rule. The rule is that a father, no man is going to love his daughter. No man is going to love a woman like the father loves his own biological daughter. Which is why Islamically, if the woman remarries, the son is mukhayyar. The son is given an option to choose which parent he wants to live with when he reaches the age of discernment, the age of 7. The daughter is never given an option. She is immediately to be taken and put with her father. Why? Because the Sharia, Islamic law, does not acknowledge that a father who was not the biological father of that girl has the capacity to raise that, nor does the Islam recognize that any father would be okay with another man raising his daughter. This is Islamic law, designed to, be in tune with the needs of the human being. No father would be okay with his daughter being raised under another man. No father would be okay with that. So in Islam, when a woman remarries, and of course, every situation should be looked at individually. This is not like a rule of thumb. This is a baseline ruling that could possibly change due to circumstances and situations. This is a baseline ruling that if the woman remarries, as the Prophet ﷺ told the woman, that your children stay with you, ma lam tankihi, so as long as you do not remarry. And when a woman remarries, al-walad mukhayyar, the boy is given an option when he reaches the late age of discernment, and the girl is not given an option, she immediately goes to her father. No man is comfortable with another man raising his daughter. Nonetheless, we shouldn't feel slighted because struggle builds character. And our parents may not have had all of the knowledge that they needed to be the best parents for us. Our parents didn't have all the answers. So when we look now at the relationships that many of us had with our parents, many of our parents didn't have the knowledge that we have today. Technology wasn't available. Information wasn't available. When you look at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and in every generation you'll find this, that the children are a little bit more advanced than and this is because of the evolution of the human being, our minds developing, and technology, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitating knowledge to generations, latter generations that the former generations didn't have. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said to his father, Ya abati inni qad ja'ani min al-ilmi ma lam ya'tika fattabi'ni ahdika siratan sawiyya. Ibrahim, when he was calling his father from shirk, he said, Ya abati la ta'budu shaitan. Oh my father, don't worship shaitan. And then he said, oh my father, inni qad ja'ani min al-ilm ma lam ya'tika fattabi'ni ahdika siratan sawiyya. He said, oh my father, knowledge has come to me that did not come to you. Knowledge has come to me from revelation that did not come to you. Meaning, I am privy to things today that you were not privy to before. This is Ibrahim talking to his father Azar. Ya abati, oh my father, but he addressed him with respect. Ya abati, oh my beloved father, inni qad ja'ani min al-ilm. Knowledge has come to me, lam ya'tika, that never came to you. Fattabi'ni, follow me, ahdika siratan sawiyya, I'll guide you to the straight path. So this is Ibrahim receiving revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in his youth, approaching his father, letting his father know that knowledge has come to me that didn't come to you before. I know some things that you didn't know. Follow me now, and I will guide you to the straight path. So don't feel slighted because you didn't have the relationship with your father that is the most ideal relationship. And how do you, go on to give your child what you didn't have? We start from where we are. You start from wherever you are. Wherever knowledge comes to you, that's exactly where your journey starts. Don't go back trying to get, reconcile what you didn't have. Start from wherever you are right now and move forward from there. The relationship that we're talking about today is between one of the greatest women to ever walk this earth and the one whom the Prophet ﷺ said was from the best of the women of Jannah, Fatimah bint Muhammad. Firstly, when we look at Fatimah, let's look at her mother. You want to look at a son, you look at his father. You want to look at a daughter, you look at her mother. Because genetically, we take on some of the characteristics of our parents. Genetically, without the parents even having any influence. We take on the characteristics, some of the characteristics and traits of our parents. So if you are interested in marrying someone, look at that person's parents. How the parent reacts, how the parent interacts, how the parent, jokes, and the personality of the parent, and you will find some of that in the child. When Maryam, the daughter of Imran, when she brought the child to her community, they said to Maryam, "Ma kana abuki imra'a saw'in wa ma kanat ummuki baghiyya." How is it that you can bring this child into the community and you're not married? They were essentially accusing her of fornication. They said to her, how could you do this? وَمَا كَانَ أَبُوكِ امْرَأَ سَوْءٍ. And your father was not known to be, lewd or licentious, loose with women. Your father wasn't known to be like that. وَمَا كَانَتْ أُمُّكِ بَغِيًّا. Nor was your mother a prostitute. Nor was your mother loose with men. How is it that you can do this? What happened here? They judged Maryam by way of her parents. They judged Maryam by way of her parents. So genetically, some of us, we take on the characteristics and certain characteristics and traits of our parents. And then, of course, the influence of living in the home with our parents. So before we look at Fatimah, let's look at her mother, the home, the home that she was raised in. And that will tell us a lot about this daughter that, we think we know so much about. Khadija's mother, Fatimah's mother was Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the first wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was an amazing and remarkable woman. And when you look at the relationship with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it kind of gives you an idea. When you look at the relationship between Khadija and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it'll kind of give you an idea of the relationship between Fatima and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Fatima was the baby. She was the youngest of all the girls. She was the youngest of all of the girls, and the only one to outlive the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even if it was for a short time after his death. But when you look at the relationship between Khadija and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it kind of gives you an idea of what type of woman her daughter would end up becoming. Khadija was wealthy. She employed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then she eventually proposed to him and married him. She was 15 years his senior, and she was the first one to believe in his message when he emerged with the da'wah of Islam. She was the first one to bring to his attention his own remarkable qualities, in an attempt to reassure him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never humiliate him. And this gave the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the encouragement that he needed to stand on his own 2 feet and shoulder the responsibility that was placed on him of revelation, of conveying revelation. This was Khadija. She was the first one to do all of these things. She was his first wife. She was the first one to believe in him. She was the first one to bring to his attention his own qualities, to reassure him. So quite naturally, this fostered in Fatima, growing up in the home, seeing her mother interact with her father. She is teaching her daughter, unbeknownst to herself. Women, you are teaching your daughters through your interaction with the husband. You're teaching your daughters how to interact with her father and how to interact with men later on in her life. So be mindful of how you interact with your spouse in the home. Be mindful of how you interact with your husband in the home, because your daughter is watching everything. She's watching everything. So quite naturally, this fostered in Fatima that womanly independence and strength of character that was necessary for her to develop into the woman that she was going to become, as well as created within her a deep love for her father that overshadowed any other love she encountered. The love that Fatima had for the Prophet ﷺ was fostered by watching the love that her mother had for her father. Very important. The mother is the blueprint of how your daughter is going to interact with men later on in her life. When you look at women that are very disrespectful to their husbands, they use profanity, they lash out at their husbands, raise their voice at their husbands, right? Either one of two things. Either this is what they saw in the home, or this is what they did not see in the home and they picked up along the way. But where did you learn that this is the proper or appropriate way for a woman to interact with her husband? Where did you learn this? You didn't get this from the mother of the believers. You didn't get that from Khadija. You didn't get that from Fatima. You didn't get that from Aisha. Even in the few instances in which Aisha raised her voice of the Prophet ﷺ, there was only a few instances. And those instances are not to be used as dalil, as proof that it's okay to do that. Because in those instances, Aisha was reprimanded by her own father for doing that. In those instances, Aisha was reprimanded. And the scholars have extracted lessons from those ahadith that point in the opposite direction of what Aisha was doing in the narration. So those are not to be used as, evidences. So when we look at Fatima's behavior with the Prophet ﷺ, as we're gonna introduce ourselves to that, we can see where she got that from. As we move along in this lecture and we see Fatima's interaction with her father, I want you to go back to everything that we just discussed and understand where she got that from. Where did she learn how to interact with her father like that? Where did she learn to cater to her father in the manner that she catered to him? Where did she learn that? She learned that from watching her mother. Very important. Secondly, let's consider the time in which the Prophet ﷺ was raising his daughters. It's not a coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ had all daughters, all girls, with the exception of Abdullah and Ibrahim, who both died in infancy. He had to marry his daughters off. Two of his daughters, Kulthum and Ruqayya, were divorced by two of the sons of Abu Lahab or Abu Jahl. They married in Jahiliyyah prior to Islam. And then when the Prophet ﷺ emerged with the da'wah of Islam, he commanded his sons to shame the Prophet ﷺ. He commanded his two sons to divorce the two daughters of the Prophet ﷺ, to humiliate him, to shame him. And the Prophet ﷺ married one of them to Uthman. And then when she died, he married the other one to Uthman. And when she died, the Prophet ﷺ said to Uthman, Wallahi, if I had another daughter, I would marry you to her. If I had another daughter, I would marry you to her. SubhanAllah. And this is why Uthman was given the nickname Dhu Nurayn. The Prophet ﷺ had to be fond of this man for him to marry two of his daughters to the same man. Think about that. He married two of his daughters to the same man. Married one daughter. When she died, he married the other daughter to him. And he said that if I had another daughter, I would marry her to you. He had to be very fond of this man. And he was given the nickname Dhu Nurayn, the possessor of two lights, because he married two of the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. But let's consider the time in which the Prophet ﷺ was raising his daughters and the dynamics of the society where they lived. Raising a daughter in the city of Mecca during that time was no different than the time that we're living in now, trying to raise a daughter. Although during that time, the disregard for women took on a different form than the disregard for women today. The disregard for women today, and you see women in music videos, you see women used for pretty much everything to sell. When you want to sell something, you just put a pretty woman in a bikini and create a commercial, 60-second commercial, and off you go. It'll sell. Women are used for everything. You want to, spice up your business. You tell your female, employees to wear tight pants, to wear tight clothing. to attract the young boys into the store. You go into places like Hollister. No disrespect, but it is what it is. You go into places like Abercrombie and Fitch. You go into some of these stores in the malls where these young girls work into these stores. They wear the tightest clothing, sometimes because of their own choice, but sometimes because this is what attracts young men, young boys, who they, this is the crowd that they are appealing to. This is the crowd that they're appealing to. So when you want to sell something, you just put a woman in something tight, right? On YouTube, when you look at some of the vines on YouTube, the image of the picture, when it first comes up before you even go into the video, the picture is usually a woman or something that looks attractive. And then when you click on the video, it's something totally different. But this is how people get you to click on the video, because they put the picture of a woman in a bikini. So you're thinking that maybe it's something, with a bikini, something to do with women. And then when you click on it, it's something totally different. The thumbnail that they use to show you the image of what it is. So women are used for, all of these different purposes in this day and time. And this is dismissing them. They become property. We don't see them as human beings. We see them for what we can get from them, right? And that time, women were dismissed in that they were viewed as a burden. Women were viewed as a burden in pre-Islamic Arab culture. So raising a daughter in the city of Mecca during that time was a tough task given to the Prophet ﷺ, given the mentality that Arabs had about women. Women didn't inherit. They were married against their will. And they were not even allowed to eat food, certain foods, which men made haram for them. Allah says in the Quran, وَقَالُوا مَا فِي بُطُونِ هَذِهِ الْأَنْعَامِ خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا وإن يكن ميتة فهم فيه شركاء سيجزيهم وصفهم إنه حكيم عليم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and they say that what is in the bellies of these cattle is specifically for the men. خالصة لذكورنا وَمُحَرَّمٌ عَلَى أَزْوَاجِنَا, and they are haram or forbidden for our wives. وَإِن يَكُن مَيْتَةً فَفَهُمْ فِيهِ شُرَكَاء, and if the baby, cattle comes out, whether it's a cow, if it's a calf, a baby calf, it comes out and it's dead, then the men and the women can eat from it. But if it comes out and it's alive, then that fresh meat is only for the men. Discriminatory. Talk about gender inequality. That certain foods were only for certain genders. If the baby, the calf came out, because they were going to slaughter it and eat the meat. So if the calf came out and it was dead, then both the men and women could eat from it. But if it came out and it was alive, then only the men could eat from it. Women were married against their will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayats in the Quran. Don't marry women against their will. Right? And it's still going on today. Forced marriages, pre-arranged marriages, where women are, forced to marry cousins and family members that they don't necessarily, even right here in America, among second and third generation Muslims who are essentially Americans, but their parents pre-arranged their marriages. You're going to marry somebody from our tribe, right? And they were buried alive as well, because they were seen as a burden for the father. This was known as, pre-modern female infanticide. Like in certain cultures, they have genital mutilation. They mutilate the genital parts of the woman so that she cannot have an orgasm, so she cannot get aroused, because they believe by doing this, they can protect their environment, their society, from fornication and adultery spreading amongst the youth. So they mutilate the genitals. They cut, the private area, the clitoris of the woman beyond repair. And not only does it steal the desire for sex and interrupt an integral part of this woman's future with her husband, in some instances it's very painful, and the women are not even able to conceive. Genital mutilation, alive and well today in the Muslim world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And when the maw'uda is the baby girl that was buried alive. The baby girl that was buried alive. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. Allah says on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, when the baby girl that was buried alive will be asked Yawm al-Qiyamah, Su'ilat, she will be asked, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. What sin did you commit? What did you do wrong to be killed? This was pre-Islamic Arab culture. This was in the environment that the Prophet ﷺ was trying to raise 4 daughters in this environment as the Messenger of Allah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Trying to raise 4 daughters in this environment as the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Can you imagine? That's no different than, what we're living today. It's just more modernized today. In the form of, contraceptives and, the 48-hour pill. So you can go and have random sexual relations with some random guy. Right? And then when the thought that maybe the condom broke or you didn't even use a condom, and that the possibility of you being pregnant by this random stray, right? The possibility of you being pregnant by this person, you come to the realization that you might be pregnant. You go and take a pill within the first 48 hours and it destroys whatever was there, right? And if you go too far along, a few months into the pregnancy, you can just go to the doctor and have the fetus sucked out of you, right? An abortion. You can go and have the fetus so you can have a very sexually reckless lifestyle. Sexual escapades, with random men or random women. And when the thought of you having this child by this, stranger, you just go to the doctor, pay a fee, and they suck the fetus out of you. Right? It's no different. It's the same thing. We live in a time today where women, I don't know if you guys remember years ago, when the woman was pregnant and she was at her prom, and she went in the bathroom and had the baby, and then threw the baby in the dumpster, and then went back into her prom to continue partying. This is where we're living. She's pregnant during her prom. This was on the news. Very famous incident. She's at her prom. She goes into the bathroom. She has the baby in the bathroom. SubhanAllah. Look at how we view life. Life means nothing to us in American culture. It means nothing to us. We don't value life. First of all, look at how the child was conceived. Look at how the child was conceived. Through some random sexual escapade. Then you have the child in the toilet stall, in the stall of the toilet. Can you imagine a woman spitting a child out? Usually birth is a very, epic moment in the life of a woman. All her family members are around. She's on her way to the hospital, bags packed. Family members are going to meet there. Everyone's waiting in the hallway. Her mom and the father of the child, everyone is there in the room with her, encouraging her. The child comes out. The doctor takes it, wipes it down, weighs it, does everything, and then gives the child back to the mother. And it's the greatest feeling that a woman can experience. Take that, juxtaposed to a woman going into a bathroom stall, spitting the child out in the most filthy place. It's not a place that you even want to go into except by necessity to use the bathroom, especially in a public bathroom stall. Let alone a place to have a child. Spit the child out, throw the child in the dumpster. I mean, just the fact that you took something to separate the umbilical cord and then throw the child into the dumpster. And then on top of all of that, while this baby is in the dumpster screaming, crying, you go back into the party and continue dancing and drinking and partying as if nothing happened. This is where we are. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And when the young baby girl will be asked, what sin did you commit for this to be done to you? What sin did that baby commit for you to do that to that child? So this was similar to the time of Musa alayhi salam. Raising children in any time, as you can see, is difficult. It's not easy to raise children in any time. You go back to the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, when raising boys was just as difficult, considering the fact that Fir'aun was slaughtering all of the male children from Bani Israel, similar to what is happening today with African American males, right? Slaughtering the men, leaving their women. So now white men have become, and this is real talk, it's no disrespect, I'm not a racist, I could care less where you find love. If that's where you find love, that's what it is. Nonetheless, to render a whole population of men ineligible for the companionship of their counterparts from the women of their culture, exterminating them through mass incarceration, exterminating them through effeminization, exterminating them through homosexuality, exterminating them through through financial marginalization. You're exterminating a whole population of men. Anytime you look on TV now, you see a male image, it's effeminized. Feminized. They make them put on dresses, put on makeup. Wesley Snipes, Kevin Hart, Martin Lawrence, you name it. They all put on dresses. Every single one of them. Every single one of them put on a dress, put on makeup, put on a wig. This is their way of effeminizing you. Right? Then you have the white male bravado. Right? They're going to make sure they protect that image. Nonetheless, during the time of Musa alayhi salam, where it was very difficult for a man to raise a boy. And when you look at the story of Musa and his mother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to help the mother of Musa protect him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَهُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and remember, talking to Bani Israel, remember when we saved you from the people of Fir'aun. يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ, and they were punishing you with the worst type of punishment. يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ, slaughtering. Allah used the word يُذَبِّحُونَ, الذَّبْح, which means to slaughter. يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ, أَبْنَاءَهُمْ, they were slaughtering the male children. وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَهُمْ, and they were letting the females live. وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ, and in this was a severe trial, a test from your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similar to what the society that we live in today, wherein African American males are in prison at such an alarming rate. They represent the largest population of incarcerated people as an ethnicity. African Americans are 17% of American population, and they make up 89% of the prison population. Go figure. African Americans are 17% of American population. We make up 89% of the prison population in America. 89%. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, from the onset of revelation, he took a very unconventional approach to challenging this cultural taboo or this cultural inequality. You think that the Prophet ﷺ, when he received revelation, he didn't see what was going on in his society? He was a thinker. He used to go up into the cave and he would sit for days at a time, thinking, contemplating life, all of the oppression, everything that's going on, what's being done to women, everything, the worship of idols, everything. He used to contemplate all of that. Do you think when he received revelation, when he received this concept, La ilaha illallah, nothing deserves worship, nothing worthy of worship except Allah. When he received this concept, do you think that he was going to ignore all of that and just concentrate totally on worship? Which is essentially what Muslims do today. We see all of this social degradation going on. We see all of this, inequality and oppression. We see all of this going on. And we ignore all of that and, give lectures and khutbahs on salat and wudu, right? I mean, no disrespect. If a person, that's what they're qualified to do and they feel as though tackling social issues is really not their bag, is really not, their forte, then, alhamdulillah. It's better for a man to يَعْلَمْ رُتْبَةَ نَفْسِهِ, to know his own level. But the Prophet ﷺ was not going to receive a concept as powerful as La ilaha illallah and not use that to address the social ills that was going on in his society. Because La ilaha illallah is religious, it's political, it's financial, it's familial, you name it. La ilaha illallah has something to do with every facet of human life. To believe that La ilaha illallah is just about not associating partners with Allah and worshiping Allah alone and that's it, you have a very narrow, very shallow outlook of this concept, La ilaha illallah. Qawlan thaqila, Allah called it in the Quran, a heavy word. Kalimatun baqiyah, as it's called in the Quran, an everlasting, the enduring word. Meaning even towards the last days, When people are not praying, they don't pray anymore, and the worst of people are living, they will still know La ilaha illallah is the enduring word. Even when a person is Muslim is not praying anymore, not fasting anymore, they still remember La ilaha illallah. They never forget that. I say La ilaha illallah, right? Muslims will say that. I believe in La ilaha illallah, right? Even though he doesn't pray, doesn't fast, doesn't do anything. But he believes in La ilaha illallah. Right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took a very unconventional approach to challenging this social status quo. He totally went against the normacy of his society as it relates to the outlook on women in both statement and action. The Prophet ﷺ was a man of statement and action, because Iman, we believe Iman is a belief in the heart, statement on the tongue, action on the body parts. Belief and action. Our whole religion is centered on belief and action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man ala jariyatayn hatta tablugha jaa yawm al-qiyamah ana wa huwa wa dhamma asabi'ahu kahatayn." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ala jariyatayn," whoever raises two daughters, hatta tablugha, until they reach the age of puberty, of marriage, then he will be with me in Jannah just like this. He will be with me in paradise like this. And he closes two fingers to show you the closeness between you and him, like this. These are words that he's saying publicly in a society that were burying girls alive, burying daughters alive. And he comes out in front of the community and says that whoever raises two daughters until they reach the age of puberty. And in another narration he says, and then teaches them good adab, teaches them good morals, good ethics, and then marries them off. And then marries them off. And then he mentioned this comment, that you will be with me in paradise like this. It changes the whole dynamic. He's challenging the status quo now. He's changing the whole dynamic now. Because before they were, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدَهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى, that when a man was given glad tidings of a daughter, ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ, his face used to turn black with embarrassment. And he would be irate, he would be angry and upset, conflicted. Should he keep this daughter and live with her in humiliation, أَوْ يَدُسَّهَا فِي التُّرَابِ, or should he bury her in the dirt? Conflicted. Should I keep this girl and then live in humiliation? Or should I bury her in the dirt and do away with the humiliation? Conflicted. The Prophet ﷺ was trying to help them resolve that conflict. Whoever takes care of two daughters and raises them until they reach the age of puberty, he will be with me yawm al-qiyamah, ja'a yawm al-qiyamah, ana wa huwa kahatayn. Me and him like this, yawm al-qiyamah. So now when people are in the habit of burying their daughters alive, or being conflicted whether they should live with them in humiliation or bury them alive, here's the Prophet ﷺ say this. Now they want Jannah. They want paradise. So now this changes everything. So now, no, I'm not going to bury them alive. I want to be with the Prophet ﷺ in Jannah like that. So now I'm no longer burying my daughter. Changes the whole status quo. Don't tell me La ilaha illallah does not challenge the social status quo, social taboos. Don't tell me La ilaha illallah doesn't challenge that. Don't tell me the Prophet ﷺ didn't deal with social issues in Mecca as well as in Medina. Don't this whole approach to just focus on your salat and don't get involved in what's going on in politics, don't get involved in what's going on around the world, wallahi, is nonsense. It's nonsense. And if you are too afraid to jump out there and do your due diligence, then don't stop somebody else from doing it either. Because we don't want to do it, and then we'll shame and blame somebody else for doing it. No, don't do that. If you can't handle it, then step out the way and let somebody else do it. And yeah, they're going to make mistakes. Mistakes, what it is, you're supposed to make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we evolve. That's how we develop, through mistakes. It's okay. But to sit back and do nothing and say nothing, this is not part of our deen. It's not part of our religion to sit back and say nothing. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he changed the whole dynamic. He challenged the status quo. And of course, when you challenge the status quo, that does not come without backlash. You challenge the status quo, you're going to catch backlash. So the Prophet ﷺ used to say things like, whoever takes care of 2 girls or 3 girls, then they will be a shield from him, from the hellfire for him Yawm al-Qiyamah. So a man said, "O Messenger," a woman said, "O Messenger of Allah, what if you only have 2 daughters?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Even 2 daughters." Another woman said, what if you only have 1 daughter?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Even 1 daughter." So now this mentality, it starts to change. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ had 4 daughters of his own. He had 4 daughters of his own. It was imperative that he changed this dynamic. It was imperative because the Prophet ﷺ, he had granddaughters as well. Umama, which was the daughter of his daughter Zainab. He used to carry her in the masjid on his shoulders. But this was only after he challenged the status quo and things began to change. And he wanted to show that it is okay. It's nothing wrong. Daughters are just as valuable to a family as boys are. And this demeaning attitude towards women has such a lasting effect on their minds and the way that they viewed themselves, that even when the Prophet ﷺ would say things that alluded to the fact that women were this or that, the women would automatically associate that with where they came from. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inni uritu nar," that I was shown the hellfire. وَرَأَيْتُ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَ أَهْلِهَا النِّسَاء. I was shown hell. And I saw that the vast majority of people in the hellfire were women. I was shown hell. And I saw that the vast majority of the people in the hellfire were women. فَقَالَتْ امْرَأَةٌ مِّنْهُنَّ وَلِمَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ لِأَنَّنَا نِسَاءٌ. So a woman came up to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, "Why? Why are the majority of women in the hellfire? You saw the hellfire and you saw that the vast majority of the people in hell were women. Why? لِأَنَّنَا نِسَاءٌ. Is it because we're women? Is it because we're women?" She thought the Prophet ﷺ was, reviving that old regime, that old mentality of demeaning women. And the Prophet ﷺ clarified that it had nothing to do with the fact that you were women. But she was interpreting the Prophet's statement through the lens of the society that they came from. Context is everything. Context is everything. And if you don't understand context, then it's upon you to ask the person what they meant. People are going to say things, and you're not going to understand where a person's wajh to another, where this person is coming from, the person's perspective, the person's context. And when you don't understand, it becomes an obligation on you to ask. Not interpret it yourself, but go and ask. She didn't walk away and say, the Prophet ﷺ, he's the messenger of Allah, but he's taking us backwards. We're going back to that old mentality. She asked, why? What is the context for your statement, your comment? He said, I saw the hellfire, and the vast majority of the people in hell were women. She said, why? Is it because we're women? And the Prophet ﷺ clarified that it had nothing to do with gender. However, it was because of a particular character flaw that is more commonly in women than in men. The Prophet ﷺ said, La, bal yakthurna al-la'an wa yakfurna al-ashir. He said, no, but because you women, you curse your spouses, not profanity, but invoking the curse of Allah on your spouses, and you are ungrateful. وَيَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرِ. And the word the Prophet ﷺ used, this is why the Arabic language is so precise. He used the word kufr. Because the origin of the word kafir is an ingrate. Someone who is ungrateful. So he used the word, he could have said that la yashkurna. He could have said you don't show gratitude to your spouses, but he wanted to emphasize. And so he used the word kufr, which we translate as disbelief, but the linguistical meaning of the word is to be an ingrate. He said, yakfurna al-ashir, you are ungrateful to your husbands. He said, لو أحسنت إلى إحداهن الدهر ثم رأت منك شيئا لقالت ما رأيت منك خيرا قط. He said that if a man can spend his whole life, his words were so powerful. He said that a man يحسن إلى إحداكن الدهر. A man could spend his whole life. The word dahr means time, his whole life. He could spend his whole life yuhsin ilayk, doing nothing but right by you. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ مِنْهُ وَإِذَا رَأَتْ مِنْكَ خَيْرًا إِذَا رَأَتْ مِنْكَ شَيْئًا. But if she sees one thing that she dislikes, she will dismiss all of the good that you have ever done for her. I have never known any good from you. You have never done any good for me. You always disappoint me. You never do this for me. You never tell me you love me. You always disappoint me. You just totally disregard everything that this man has ever done for you because you've seen one mistake from him. One mistake. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, but dwell on that. I had to lay the foundation first before we could go into the relationship between Fatima and her father. I wanted to paint the picture for you, to show you what was going on and why the Prophet ﷺ, his relationship with his daughter was the way that it was. I wanted to give you some of, the backstory, so that as we move forward in this lecture, you can now begin to piece together the puzzle that many of us have as it relates to these random narrations that we've read throughout our Muslim lives about the relationship between Fatima and her father. This is what I wanted to present. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I'll open up the chat for a few minutes for questions and answers. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.